Shalom Avrocha. So I hope everybody's Shuas was as meaningful as expected, and even more. So this week we are in going straight from Shuas into Parshas Nase. We've been in Parshas Nase the whole week, and it's brought down in Svarim actually that Shuas also, like all the other Shalosh Regalim, there is a Chol Hamoed. There is a 7-day Chol Hamoed. So not always do we have the capacity and the bechira to celebrate Chol Hamoed for another a full 7 days of Yom Tov and then plus one. But this year it happens to be that this is how it's happening, because we're technically going from Tuesday, we're going straight till Monday with all the preparations and the Isser Chag. So we're definitely experiencing something. We're in a different space, the ability to stay in that space and not just after 2 days go back to the lower eagle, the lower circle, the smaller oisius, and the going back straight to work after Matan Torah, going into the world and integrate. We're given an extra few days to process and to really let it saturate. It's like a soup that you cook is always better the second day. So in yesterday's Tanya, we're talking about, Alter Rebbe is talking about there were Asur Mamuras Shabbat. So we have the Asur Mamuras, which is the 10 vibrations that created the world, Yihi Oir, and then Yihi Rikiah, and so on and so forth, and going through from Parshas Bereshis. And then in those 10 mamaras, the chatzonis, those are the kelim, the vessels that are holding it. And in those 10 mamaras, there is the Aseres Adibris, which is the pnimis, which is the actual, the tachlis hakavana, the purpose of the whole creation, the purpose of why everything is happening, which means that before Welt was created, it was Hu Shmoi Echad, which means that everything was within everything. There was no space for any type of separation. There was really no space for any expression. All the expressions were within the possibility of any type of expression. But it was still in the koyach, but not in the poil. In the poil, which means that we can act it out, which means that every person has within himself all the koyachas, all the possibilities. And then when it's expressed by different relationships that we are in, each and every one of us get to express self in a different way, and based on how we need to express self, that's how we choose, and that's how we enter into the tzenoris, we enter in the matrix of life, and going down all the madrigas, all the way from Atzilus, coming down all the way down to Malchus the Asiya, and then we're kind of forced, and or it's been set up in a way that the freedom, the choice that we have is within the dynamics of where we live in, which means that I can choose. I want to go live somewhere else, and I want to have so much and so much of shefa. But am I really? I can make up my mind to do so. But am I really? Am I really able? Do I have the capacity to bring down and manifest those my thoughts? But within the space that we're in, the incubator that we're in, we have the ability and the bechira to ultimately get to, and the obligation to get to the space that we chose and the part of the role that we chose to play. And we're all going to end in the same place. It's just a matter of what shvil, what road, and what slide we choose to take for us to be able to express and bring the light and the awareness and the das into the world, into all the way down into Olam Asiyah, and that is what's building the Beis Hamikdash up there in the higher vibration. So every action that we do, every action that we take, has a consequence. A consequence can be a positive, also a positive consequence, and those they are based on. Ultimately, it comes down to bittul. It comes down to surrender. It comes down to surrender, which is called yira, and yira is going to take the person immediately to where he needs to go. What does that mean? So when there was oneness, everything was everywhere. Hashem was everywhere and everything. When there was a symptom, when symptoms started happening, which means restriction, when space was started being created for expression, there was such a godless and such a greatness of our Creator there. He allowed for it. He, so to speak, removed himself, chas v'shalom, but not really, but just in a way of kind of like hiding, putting on different filters, that some parts of creation can feel as if they are in control and they are in charge, and that was designed that way, so we can choose. Because if not for that, there wouldn't be choice. Choice means that we wouldn't have this feeling of this celebration of achievement. That's the word I'm looking for. We wouldn't have this level of achievement, which brings a tremendous amount of onig, pleasure, of menuchas nefesh, which means alignment, that I've accomplished what I set out to do. It can be as simple as organizing my the bookshelf, organizing the house, which feels a certain sense of accomplishment. And this goes throughout, from all the way from top to bottom, from bottom to top, that because of that symptom, because of that restriction, we're given the feeling of accomplishment, that and through that we can enter a space of tainuk, which is the keser. We're going into the keser, we're going into the crown, which is the tainuk, and the lower part of that is the ratzon, which is the will, which is a tremendous player here over Shuas. There's this pull, like not a desire. It triggers the desire, because if I want something, ultimately I'm desiring in order for to be able to act, to play it out. So how do we get self out? We're so stuck in that blind spot that we can't see what we really want, because we're stuck in the action, in the play of tzimtzum. We're on the other side. We're in the mayim tachtonim, in the lower waters, which is we are each and every one, as everyone in their own space, in their own dalad amas, that we can't see what we really want, and therefore there's this struggle and this conflict from within. But by going into Yiras Hashem, which is going into a place of just finding self, letting go of all my projections, and going into what it is that I really want. And that happens with Kabbalah Satara, the Pnimius, which is that we're going into who am I, understanding, finding my identity. And once I have my identity, everything else loses its power, because the only way the tzimtzum, the separation, has the power is because we are in relationship with it. We're in relationship with our struggles. By being in relationship with it, we're feeding that and fueling that and keeping that in place. And by surrendering, by going into Yiras Hashem, then we can go in from there to Avas Hashem. But how does that process work? So we had at the times of Shlomo Melech, it says that the Levana was at its full display. That's the expression by Shlomo Melech, which means, we spoke about this in the past previously, that we're kind of forced, if let's use the mashal of one country deciding to drop all its defenses and let go of all its security, and we're going to live in a world of peace, then somebody may come and take advantage of that. So we're kind of like klippa, and the ugliness and the ra, the bad part of world, has set itself up in a way that even the people that want to do the right thing are forced to comply with not doing the right thing, and staying in conflict out of fear that if I surrender, then somebody else will take advantage. And that's the story of each and everyone's life, been taken advantage of. And then we're kind of stuck in the relationship of lower vibration or lower frequency, and we can't get out. Now, at the time of the only time there was peace in the whole world, There was no wars. That was the time of Shlomo HaMelech, because he was able to hold such space. He was Chachma of Malchus de Atzilus. There was such a display of light and correctness that there was no choice. There was almost no freedom. There was no bechira for any type of resistance or any type of opposition, because any type of opposition that came to the surface was immediately met by a level of correctness and light that you had to surrender to it. And that was Shlomo HaMelech. But after that, once again, the arrows started going up and the laser attacks started happening again, 1 and 1, 2 and 4, and then before you know, the whole world is in a gridlock where we are just in conflict, and it trickles down all the way from the top down to the bottom to our daily lives. So we have in the Tanya yesterday talks about that there is 231 sha'arim, which means doorways, panim va'acher, which means that there are the letters, the oisias, the kav beis oisias, they are in relationship, the aleph with the base, and then we have the adbash, which is the aleph exchanges with the taf, and there's different systems of this, the way the codes are written and created. That's called the Kabbalistic work, that they're able to change and manipulate in a positive way this light, because any type of manipulation has consequences, and if somebody manipulates not in a good way, giving somebody the wrong advice, ultimately that person will pay the price for that. There's consequences. That is the Yashdin, the Yashdain at the end of the day. So we have 231 relationships of oisias that are meeting with each other. And from those letters, from those combinations, this is what we exist and this is what we live in. So we have the Asara Mamoris, which is the 10 vibrations that created the world. Those are global. They're the global command. They're holding the space globally. That's the centerpiece for what holds the world and all the galaxies and everything in place. And those are not necessarily they're not for individual, for the prad. They're too powerful, they're too strong. And from there, that's where the tziruf are starting to happen, panav va'acher, which means that we're in relationship with different ideas and different ways of life. That all comes from the Rala Sha'arim, with the 231 Sha'arim, that is creating our existence. And then there's other combinations of relationships as it comes down lower. It says are the chalifim with tmiris oisias, the exchange of oisias, which means that we can take different words and create different sentences. As you speak, you have the choice to ask this way or ask that way, ask it like this. So it means that we can move and create different scenarios by different ways of expression. That is all that's happening when there's the relationship between pan and va'acher. But then when we went into Galus, then the tzirufim are happening through gematriyos, which is a cheshbon oisius, which means that there is another way of creating being in relationship, which is gematriyos, which is, you ever heard that this is gematria so much, that's gematria this much and that much. What is happening in those gematriyos? So those gematriyos is it's a lower connection, it's a lower frequency, a lower vibration. And that does not necessarily work by the sentence of how I express or how it's received and in the relationship of panav va'acher, but rather it goes by more in a place of vibration, and it's more in a place of feeling, which is more like the animalistic world, which you see the animals are communicating. A dog, a kelev, communicates through smell, and more of like if it picks up fear, then just like every other animal, but this is like more of like the lower level type of expression. That is what's happening in the gematriyos, which means that the gematria is there is a vibration, and then there is a way of how to feed that vibration, which means that if you think about it, what controls the stock market? What controls politics? What controls everything out there? Which means that rates are going up, rates are going down. There is a recession. what is happening over there? Now, those things, if you think about it, there is no real answer to it, because even if there is, but then when things start moving again, what really happened over there? And if that happened, why didn't it happen? Why did the downfall start to begin with? Why wasn't it prevented? So that is part at its word, the Tanan HaGadol, which is that he is staying in control by feeding a certain vibration, staying in touch with a certain pain, the same way as two people are in a relationship, husband and wife, friends, and there is a certain a feeling of resentment and resistance for no reason, because I'm not allowing myself to go to a place of what I really want. Rather, I'm responding from a place of what I'm feeling. I'm feeling right now frustration, so we're going to go into a relationship with that frustration, and nobody is letting go, and we're trapped in that. That is the gematria. Now, it's such a squeeze that right now the Levana is cracked in half, which almost like the visual is that imagine a half a moon that has almost like a banana shape, that has the point at the bottom and the point at the top. Now Pada is sitting at the Earth and he's squeezing in at the back of the head, which is the triangle. There can be a 10-degree squeeze, a 20-degree squeeze, but then there is an 80% squeeze, which creates, literally distracts the person from any type of freedom of being able to see the bigger picture, but we're forced in a certain place, in a certain lower realm of expression that causes anxiety, and the anxiety is as a lack of expression for no reason. We don't really know where it's coming from, why it's coming from. That is happening through the gematrios, and that is being fed in order to keep the people, to keep the person in a lower vibration. There is the foods that we eat, and all the waters there is has the contamination in it, and the fears and the wars, the vaccination, and so on and so forth. I'm getting very real over here, because that's what we're dealing with in Kabbalah Satira. In order to understand what's happening, we need to go all the way down to the bottom, because Matan Torah is where the Mayim Alyonim, the Mayim Tachtonim, the Pamalish Malam, the Pamalish Mata, which is that when you're having an amazing experience, and feeling good and positive, and once you try to integrate that and bring that into the lower realm, you can't really express it to where we get to a point where it's just a fantasy. But it's not a fantasy, because if you're thinking it, then you're imagining it, then it exists. It's just a matter of making it through the clogged channels to be able to bring it in. So there is a lot of models, a lot of shapes and forms and stencils as to how to deal and process with the gematrios, which is that low voltage type of expression. Now that is as a result because there is no oisius and there is no relationship, there is no expression. Matan Torah is we received oisius, we received letters, we received expression, which is that in this infinite world, infinite creation, infinite, endless of levels of creation, there was the oisius, the letters, which is the Torah, is the panimias, the 613 plus 7 mitzvahs derabanan, is the body, so to speak, of the panimias of Creator. That's his ratzon, which means that the ratzon could want anything, but this is the panimias haratzon is Torah and mitzvahs. By going into the Torah and mitzvahs, which means Kabbalah Torah b'pnimius and Simcha, going into the pnimius, that is the key of climbing out and starting to replenish and give expression to Malchus, which is the fabric of where and what we all exist in and from, which is the Malchus Peh. That's why we stay up Shavuos night. We're missing oisius, we're missing letters, and we can get into that too. How come we slept and why did we sleep? But ultimately, Tikkun Leil Shvius is specifically designed to say all the whole Tikkun that we're saying. It's called Tikkun, which is rectification. We're rectifying and correcting the lack of oisius, which means the lack of expression, which means staying stuck in the gematria, staying stuck in the heaviness, in the sound, in almost like a beep rather than a full-on rich expression of what am I experiencing, what is it that I want, and what is it that is wanted of me, what am I here to do. That is the work that Klal Yisrael, that we received on Matan Torah and Shavuos. So this week is also Parshas Nasa Esresh B'nai Gershon, which is, as the Alter Rebbe goes into detail, Gershon, Kahas, and Merari. We're talking about levels of programs. You have Yirat Atah, which is Yirat Atah, Avas Olam, Ava Rabba, and Yirei Allah. Yirat Atah is low level fear. I want to do this because if I don't do this, I'm not going to get that. If I lie or if I do something wrong, Hashem is going to punish me, or that person will be upset at me. So I need to fit in. So therefore, I'm going to comply, and that's why I'm doing that. And that works. It's Yirat Atah, and you will receive back. You're going into a relationship with that. Then there is Avas Olam, which is appreciating, loving the world. It's an amazing world, and it's beautiful, and it's a level of Ava, but it's still very much in the world in the physical. I want and I love and I like, and therefore when I don't have, then I don't like and I don't want. And then there is Avos Olam, which is a greater level of love, of just tapping into the essence, tapping into that, the spine, the centerpiece of everything that's going on. The centerpiece within all the chaos, within everything that's going on, finding a sense of self, finding the me, finding of when going into that place, there is just a level of menuchas hanefesh, because really, ultimately, menuchas hanefesh is finding what you want finally at last, and usually that does not come easy. And then they have Yirei Allah, which is it's a level of Yireh. Well, that's a whole other topic. So it's all about Bamidbar. When we're going into the Midbar, we spoke about there was the counting what? We're counting the letters. Each and every Yid, each and every body has a code, has an aleph base. Different ones, different combinations, and when coming together, different expressions happen. As you can see yourself, you go to this space, you go to that space, this family, that family. There is different expressions that are coming up, different resistance that are coming up, or different connections that are happening within that space. And this week we're going deeper into that. After Matan Torah, Nasa Esresh B'nai Gershon, which is, it's not going into the prat, but we're going into the klal. We're going into the actual program of what is behind, of where we exist, of where we should really exist. Now, there is a level of hispilus. Spilus means like having a moment of an expression, a moment of connection. There are different things that get inspired by different things. A person gets upset. What I mean, he got upset because there's something within me, that a certain truth that was touched by that expression that came from the other side. So I'm in a relationship, and it activated a truth within me, a truth within the person of from within that place. And there's different levels of expression, different levels of hispilus. Then there is the hispilus of the neshama. The hispilus of neshama is, as we mentioned before Yom Tov, is what do I, after I expressed, after the person said what he had to say, and time passes and the person calms down and finds himself in a more peaceful place, there's always that level of, well, I could have said it that way. Maybe I shouldn't have said it this way. That is the hispilus of Olam HaTikun, which is the neshama, which is going into the right side, the Chalal Ha'yimini, going into the right side of the heart, which is Nefesh Elikis, and that thing gets inspired only by his hispilus is only from positive. There is no conflict in that space. Everything is one because it sees the bigger picture. It's chachma. It has the royas anoilat. You can see the outcome. When entering that space, a different reality is what appears. A different reality shows up. It's a different. We're linking up into going from hardwire to a Bluetooth, and then going into a 5G or 6G, going into a different space on a space where we see different, we understand different, and automatically that's how there is a bitter of the Ra, a bitter of the lower realm, a bitter of the, instead of dealing with it, which means that I'm keeping it alive by dealing with the issue, keeping it alive, staying angry and waiting and all that, that keeps it alive. It's a process, it works, but it's going into the desert for 40 years. Or we're entering in the level of neshama, which is being nispal, being inspired by a more, a finer vibration, a finer expression. So that is the avodah of Shuas after going through the process of Sfiras Omer, which is one of the highest times of the year that we are in, going into the spheres, refining them, seeing them, letting go, and changing, creating space, not waiting for the world to change, but rather understanding that each and every one of you, each and every one of us have the ability and the obligation to stand up to what you are really inspired by. What is it that you really want? What are you really inspired by? What will give you that space, that place of touching your nakuda, touching your panimias, where you are finally have peace and menuchas nefesh. So with that, I think with that, we can all have an awesome Shabbos. Yes, there is Lashon HaKodesh. Lashon HaKodesh is what the world was created with, and that has the key to open. It's a master key. It's a master key to all the locks. Small words, big words. It has the ability to open up any door anywhere you want to enter into. That happens through Lashon HaKodesh. Tehillim, learning, Gemara, Chassidus, davening, Tefillah is the thing. Tefillah is where it's all happening. So yeah, it's also the process of the chametz and the matzah, where you have the matzah deflates. The chametz inflates, the matzah deflates by going into Yira, which is Yiras Hashem, Reishis Chachma, Yiras Hashem, which is going into Chachma. That automatically is like putting in a needle into a ball that it deflates. The whole ball just collapses. But if you don't have the panemias, then one finds himself collapsed with nothing. But if you have the oisias of who you are, the oisias of Torah, and whatever else is your panemias, the oisias and neshama, then when you deflate that ball, you find yourself in Eretz Yisrael. Have an awesome Lechting Shabbos.